there! Welcome to Pallet University. So as you can see, we're in a little bit of a different format than usual because we've had something very unusual happen in that we had the Pokemon Direct go live this morning at around 9 o'clock. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be very careful about what I show to you because I've already had 2 videos on the main channel blocked by Nintendo because they hate content creators for some reason. And apparently only small ones, because the bigger ones didn't get blocked, but that's tea. Anyway, so we're going to be going through, just taking an in-depth look at some things that I noticed while watching it for the first... I've probably seen it about 10 times by this point. But some of the things that I noticed that make me very happy. Only one thing made me a little sad. Well, I guess 3 things that I noticed made me quite sad. But overall, big picture, these games look phenomenal. I'm going to take you through some things that I noticed that you may not have. So, one of the first things that I noticed is in this particular scene. Obviously, the point of, what they want to direct your attention to is this big, what is assumed to be a gym in the foreground, or background, which in the ground. The gyms, as we'll see later in the trailer, show up mainly, they appear to be like soccer stadiums, essentially. Because it's basically a spectator sport now, which I think is really cool. But not just with the gym, but in this scene we see something like this that's sort of Stonehenge-esque. I know this is not Stonehenge, because we see later when they show a full map of the region that this is not where Stonehenge would be at all. This is on the mainland. But this is really interesting, just like these towers of rocks, which I think is really interesting. And I don't know if that's going to keep being a recurring theme in the games. It might be. But the biggest thing in this scene that I wanted to point out was this right here. Oh no, Fluff. Was this right here. Because to me, that looks vaguely like an unknown. I might be just grasping at some of these straws here that this rock lays in. But to me, that looks like if an early culture saw an unknown, I could see them thinking that, when they, not that I'm saying that the ancient cultures of the UK were like cavemen, but if you think of caveman drawings, they're very jagged, There's very little roundness to them. So I'm thinking this might be an unknown. Because it's not even like this is just completely hollowed out. There's a spot in the center that looks like it's kind of raised. And that could be like the unknown's eye. This to me kind of looks like an unknown axe, personally. That's a very long shot, and I don't think that'll end up coming true, but if it does, you boy called it. So I've now literally about 10 seconds later been refuted because we see basically the same pattern right here, which is definitely not an unknown. Yeah, so, oh well, it was a nice thought. Also, I noticed on these patterns of the gym, this appears to be just the general league logo in this region. You're not going to tell me that that's not a Sharingan from Naruto. You're not going to tell me that, because that 100% is what that is. So, Naruto Pokemon crossover confirmed. Our first looks at some of the scenery of this region are phenomenal. This forest strikes me as someplace that's going to be really important. The way this just looks doesn't look like it's going to be like a Viridian forest, where it's one of the first places you come across. It doesn't look like that at all. So something about this says that it's going to be very important. So each of the first 2 things that made me quite sad about this trailer is that right here, we see the trainer walking around, the female character, walking around, crouching in the grass looking for Pokemon, but you do not see a Pokemon following behind her. And also, you don't see Pokemon in the overworld, because she's crouching, and she gets an encounter. So, unfortunately, grass encounters are back. Makes me sad. Fortunately, they are still... They're back to the way they used to be, in that it's not the Pokemon Go catch mechanics anymore, which is great. But no following Pokemon does take away a bit of the hype for me, personally. We get a look at what I am assuming to be the professor's lab. Just based on all of these books, we've got some nice ivy growing above the windows. This right here appears to be a microscope. And then these appear to be reading brainwaves or vital signs of 3, I'm assuming Pokemon. And then right here we have a small garden-like thing in the lab, filled with roses and such. So this might be, you might have one of these set up for each of the starters, which I think would be pretty neat. And this is where the grass-type starter is. We also see, just a second before that, in a close-up of the male trainer, rocks! We see rocks! We actually see quite a lot of rocks and gems like this throughout the trailer. But we'll get to that in just a second. So as I was saying earlier, it appears that Pokemon, the gym battles appear to be much more like a spectator sport now. Because, we're wearing a jersey, wearing athletic clothes with a number on our back even, and we have this interesting little glove on our hand. And there's spectators in the stands. We know this is a gym because these glass panels on the top, as well as these like beam type things coming up. Because if we look back at the gym, where are you? When we were showed the gym, did I skip it? Right here. Right here. So we see these beams and we see the glass windows on the top as well. Oh, and the region is confirmed to be in the UK. We just saw a brief glimpse of Big Ben, and when we get to see the whole region itself, that becomes very evident. So we'll see that in just a second. Alright, so we get another closer shot of the Big Ben-esque tower in the city that is based off of London. We see a lot of mechanical themes throughout this game as well, because London is, well, I've never been there, so I don't actually know. But from everything I've seen, London's a very industrialized city. So this makes a lot of sense. Then we see... At first, I thought this was Meowth. Just because of the foot looks exactly like Meowth. The colors are a little bit different, but I thought it was Meowth. Then I see we get a first look at some of the starter Pokemon. Firstly, we have Scorbunny. That is item number 3. That makes me very sad. That is the worst name for a starter Pokemon I've ever heard of. By far. It's not even like a pun, like Tepig. I think that's a great name. I think that's a great name personally. It's, Tepid Pig, Tepig. Scorbunny is bad. The design, the Pokemon itself, super cute. It's adorable. Look at it. I'm a little concerned, though, that this might end up being a fighting type again, just because of this little bandage over its nose. I think mostly of Maylene, the Gen 4 gym leader who has the bandage on her nose, because she's a fighting type gym leader. So, we'll see. If this ends up being a fighting type, plus we already sort of have a fighting type, Bunny and Megalopony. So I would prefer if it weren't fighting type, but I guess it wouldn't be super sad. So there's Scorbunny. Then we get the best starter. Hello, my child. Hello. You're so derpy and adorable, but I love you. And then we have a really interesting Pokemon, in my opinion. We have the Grass-type starter. Oh, the Water-type starter's name is Sobble. Yes, S-O-B-B-L-E, Sobble. Water-type Chameleon. I'm a big fan. I love lizards. I actually have a pet lizard. He's adorable as well. But yeah, so lizards. That's probably, I always pick the Grass-type starter, but not in this game. I'm definitely picking, I'm definitely picking Sobble. But this Grookey, the Grass-type starter, really makes me... It's a close second. This thing is adorable. Just look at it sit and just like... That's what Pansage and Simisage should have been, but Gen 5. So, we get a little bit more information about the games, such as the names, Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. These are names that nobody saw coming. even the leaks that came out yesterday or the day before about the Pokemon Chaos and Pokemon Control, or Pokemon King and Pokemon Queens. No, I never gave any of those much weight personally, which is why I never made a video about them. Pokemon Sword and Shield, I think those are really interesting titles, and the logos I think also look very, very interesting, because they make me sort of think that there might be like a wolf legendary in the game to base, you know, both logos on it. I feel like wolf has got to be kind of important in the game somehow, but that's just me. So next up we have a look at the Galar region. This is interesting because it looks very unbalanced almost. Because if you think about it, I'm assuming that we're going to start down here. I doubt they would start us in the city based off of London, which is up here. And in general in Pokemon games, they tend to start you in the south and then have you work your way north. So I'm assuming that we'll be starting down here, but if you look, you can see, we'll get a closer look at it in a minute, but the closest gym is that Grass-type one, which is all the way up here. And there's 5 gyms that are visible. So there's a Grass one, a Water one, then there's one here that I couldn't tell the type. This one right here is purplish pink, so it might be like Poison or Psychic or Fairy. Then there's one right here that may be Ice, just because of its location in these mountains. But that's it. We only see 5. Assuming that there'll probably be one in this city, which is based off of London. And then I don't know the UK all that well, but I don't know what city this is supposed to be. But I could imagine there being a gym there as well, which makes it 7. But if we're starting here, and the first, the closest gym is probably in this London city, that's a lot of time to get there. That's half the region to get there. So I thought that was very interesting, and a very interesting like design choice for the region. So let's get a little bit of a closer look. Okay, so we have a closer look at some of the towns. Right here appears to be just kind of one town almost, just because there's no houses there. I'm assuming one of these two will be our house. Maybe this one, but this seems like... I'm getting some like Mr. Pokemon vibes from it, where it's like, you start here, go to the lab, which I'm assuming is this one here. And then the professor tells you to go do something up in this house, you go investigate, and then you come back and start your journey and by progressing up north in the region. Let's keep going. We see these railways, which might be how you sort of get around early game, because we see a rail station here. So maybe you just skip all of this area altogether to start with, and then you get on the rail station here, go through, take the rail all the way up to this London city, and maybe the London-based city is like the 2nd or 3rd place you go in the game. I could sort of see that, I guess. Let's see, let's keep going. There's a lot more railways than I thought, because there's one here. This looks like one there, although by the way it leads into this, that makes it look like the mine that we're going to see a little bit later in the trailer. But then we see another sort of rail line right here as well. So maybe that'll be a big part of how you get around in the game, which would be kind of interesting. Maybe it'll like give you an option to whether you want to walk there yourself or take the rail. I don't know. I'm just now noticing these giant mushrooms next to this gym as well, so that leads me to believe that this is most likely fairy, just based on the way that they're glowing. They remind me a lot of Morlo, so that's most likely a fairy gym. This one sort of looks like a rock gym, just based on where it's located in this sort of cirque, is what that is called geologically. Interesting. See this big city that looks a lot more industrial than the London-based city as well. And we see up here we have another sort of rail station, and then a path that leads up to what I'm assuming is the Indigo Plateau / Elite Four. So now we just see a lot of the same footage that we saw from the beginning, but just inside a switch now. The exact same footage. But this is something that I wanted to talk about, because I think this is going to be very, very important. I don't know off the top of my head of any large-scale carvings or structures built into the ground like this or like in the UK. I know of things like the Nazca lines in Peru, where this is the case, where they made these massive, miles-long structures so that only the gods could see them. Because in order to see the whole picture, you have to be looking down on it. And this gives me that kind of vibe. So these things on the bottom, except for this one maybe, they look like people. And this is clearly not a person, based on, you know, the tail and the spikes on the back, and the fact that it's like yelling or breathing some kind of cloud that then shoots electricity. This, I'm going to call it right now, this is the legendary Pokemon. Or at least one of them, one of the important ones. But I think it's interesting how humanoid it is, because generally, the legendary Pokemon aren't very humanoid. You think of things like Xerneas, Yveltal, Groudon, and Kyogre. You know, Groudon a little bit in just the fact that it has 2 arms and 2 legs, but that's about it. Even in, you know, the only humanoid one really is Mewtwo. So it'll be interesting to see what this, you know, legendary, because I'm very convinced that this is going to be a legendary Pokemon. So now we get a closer look at inside the mines, which is really interesting, because they don't, you know, I'm sure that the game will be cleaned up a little bit because game footage is not final. And even though, you know, visually the games look great, it just doesn't look super polished. So hopefully they, you know, give a little more detail to these rocks in the walls here. So I think it's a really neat place. I'm sure you can find all sorts of evolution stones in this place. And we have releasing worldwide in late 2019, assuming if they're following their pattern from the last 4 or 5 years, that's going to be in November, probably around mid-November. So those are my opinions on these games. So far, I love them. The logos look phenomenal. The names, I think, work a lot better, in my opinion, than like Pokemon King and Queen or Pokemon Chaos and Control, which was leaked, you know, in the last couple days, like I said. Sobble is probably going to be up there in my top 10 favorite Pokemon now, just because he's adorable, he's an awkward little nugget, and I love him. I'm very convinced that that thing on the ground is a legendary Pokemon, and that railways are going to be an incredibly important way of getting around this region. That said, I am quite sad that there's no following Pokemon. At least, that's an assumption, just based on the trailer. I feel like if that were coming back, that would have been a very big selling point that they would have wanted to make. Personally, but so no following Pokemon, no overworld encounters, does make me a little bit sad, as well as Scorbunny's name. That's just a bad name. But anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm just gonna bring this video to a close. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know, are you Team Scorbunny, Team Sobble, or Team Grookey down in the comments below. And what are you most excited about for Generation 8? Let me know that down below as well. Follow us on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up to date with some general sciencey things that I like to post every now and then. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.